Again, welcome to the Orchestrator CDS. Yeah, and let's start with the dashboard demo.
All right, cool. So yesterday, most of the stuffs were demoed by Alfonso. So I'm going to just highlight some of the features. So over in the cluster host, we can see the list of hosts and the services running on each of these hosts. So over here, we can click on any of the hosts and we can edit or delete or put that host into maintenance or something like that. So yeah, we can, if we want to edit a host, we can edit and add labels to that host, like for example this, and add label, and it will add that label onto the host, and same way we can delete that label. So if you want to delete, I will just remove that label and that's it, and the labels will be deleted and we will get the notification like this. So one of the next feature is the maintenance mode, like putting a host into maintenance mode. So for that, we need to select a host and we need to click the drop down and do an enter maintenance, and it will show a warnings like this. If removing RGW daemons can cause clients to lose connectivity. So in this case, we are forcing this host to go into maintenance when I click the continue. So yeah, it will happen. It will process it like this, and if it is successful, it will put the host into a maintenance mode, and we can see the status over here. Yep. So now this host is in maintenance mode, and slowly these services will be uh, removed from this host. So yeah, that is the host maintenance mode. And if you want to exit, and if you try to put another host into maintenance mode right away, it will show us these errors, like removing this RGW, like removing RGW damage can cause loose connectivity, and there is like alert, like not enough remaining NFS statements. So it is not safe to stop mon at this time because there won't be enough mons to be in quorum and stuff like that. So this won't be possible, and we cannot put this host into maintenance unless we clear these errors. So yeah, that's another thing, and we can exit this host from maintenance mode. Yeah, and it will be successfully exited. And this is the host maintenance feature. And yeah, same way we can add or delete host to, like if we create, and let's see, Ceph 01, I'm going to create another host like Ceph node 03, and if I click create, it will create another host Ceph 03. And another thing right now I'm working on is like the ability to create a host in maintenance mode from the dashboard side. So if I create a host like this and check this box and create this host, so that host will be in maintenance mode when it is created, so that none of the services will be added to it while the time of creation. And also we can delete this host like this. Yes, and this is all from the host side. The features that are overlapping between cephadm and Ceph dashboard. So I think one thing we can add over here is, like, when we are creating a host, we can include like adding the labels when we are creating the host itself. So that's some of the things maybe we need to create over here too.
You also should add a way to specify the address of the host.
Yeah.
It might be possible that we don't have name resolution within the cluster. And if that's the case, we need the host name and the address field.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Cool. And that's the host thing, and then it's the services part. I think Alfonso yesterday went over this section briefly. So we can see all the services running over here, and the service manager service running on this host. Same with this NFS, like that. We can see it from over here. We can also, if you want, we can create services, and we can delete. Even if you want, we can delete the services. So those kinds of stuffs are possible from the services side. And
One thing worth mentioning here in the services is that there is right now there is the possibility to create HA proxy service. I guess that might change, right, with the recent changes or planned changes for cephadm.
Might change. Sage is working on something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk about it a little bit. Yeah.
Apart of that, just to comment that the services dialog box, I think that is too much generic. Okay, when you, for example, yes, okay, that's that's the dialog box. Okay, we have something that is common to every kind of service, but I think that we need a special section. Okay, in order to specify configuration parameters that now is possible, and also specific attributes for each of the services. Okay, so I think that in order to do that, probably we need to provide to the dashboard some kind of schema. Okay, in order to describe what are the attributes that the user can use in each kind of service. Okay, because in this moment I think that is too much generic. Okay, so in most of the cases it's going to deploy something that is by default and probably not well. We need to use spec files.
Can you try to add a LGW? Can it use the LGW type? Right. And there, Omega, you have the port and the SSL segment. So some things are missing, but I think it's still there already. If you
Yeah, but the problem is that if what happens if we add or remove some kind of attribute in any kind of service?
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying, that we need to provide a schema in order to avoid to be completely in coordination, in synchronization with the dashboard, in order to add or to remove attributes or configuration settings in each of the services.
For example, the certificate and private key were just recently combined into one field.
Yeah, that's one of the perils of this approach. Right now, every service has a crafted HTML, just to say. So if we have this exchange of schemas, we can avoid this kind of out of sync situation where some changes happen in cephadm, but we didn't notice that in dashboard. And so probably if we can agree on that kind of schema for the service spec, we could use that definition instead of hard coding the different inputs.
Even from the part of the command line interface, I think that it's going to be also useful, okay? Because in the documentation, not for all the services, we have all the possibilities that you have possibilities that you have in the spec file, okay? So to have any kind of command in order to provide a list and a schema of what is the description, the possibilities, the attributes of each service is something that is going to be useful also for the command line interface.
I mean, there are two options, right? We create a way to describe the the service spec structure in YAML, and the dashboard can accept an arbitrary structure to craft this, or any pull request that modifies the service spec also adjust the dashboard accordingly, right?
Even we're using YAML, I think JSON schema can work with YAML perfectly. So if we can easily have this template, we can change that.
Okay. Yeah, maybe there's like just an example. If you can point us at how to do it, that would be, I think. One other question. I noticed here, like if you do services type, the types include like mon and manager. Those are singleton services. They don't even have an ID, and so you can only create one of them. I wonder if they should be like grayed out if they already exist.
You should be able to modify them.
Yeah.
Change the placement for an existing mon tag, but we should never have the case where we are creating a mon service.
Unless this is a conversion from a like an adoption conversion from a non-cephadm or whatever, then you would create it. But even then, like it doesn't, you don't have to do it through the dashboard. You could just do that through the CLI. So we could just leave those out entirely for the create path for mon and manager.
Okay. Thank you. So shall I move on?
Container name for services. So the container image name is per daemon and not necessarily per service.
Yeah, this is the same as the Orch-ls output. It says mix if they aren't all the same. But we also just removed it entirely from even the Orch-ps because it's usually a digest and it's not really interesting or useful.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we should just drop it from here too. I think the more interesting thing is the Ceph version, which you have for the individual daemons. You could add that to the service and then also do the thing where if they're all the same, show it. If they aren't, then say it's a mix.
For both here in this list.
Yeah. I think that makes more sense. I can't remember if the Orch-ls does that as well or if it.
So your suggestion here is to hide the container image name?
Yeah.
Okay.
But in both tables.
Yeah, hide the container image name in both cases. And in also container image ID, same with the container. Well, the ID makes sense in the daemon one, but it doesn't make sense. I don't think it's needed in the service list. But you could put the version in there with mix, or not. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't think it might not matter.
And you can combine daemon type and daemon ID with a dot.
Yeah.
If you want.
Yeah.
Makes it much more readable.
Yeah.
OSD.0, OSD.1, OSD.2.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, hopefully we can get rid of the word wrapping.
Yep. So okay, I'll move on. So OSDs yesterday, Alfonso showed over here, and I have configured NFS over here, and so we can create NFS export with these forms. Currently, we don't support NFS v3, it's only v4. So yeah. And I have also configured the file systems, so it can be seen over here with the teachers can be expanded. And yeah, the object gateway, the other thing. And yeah, I think that's mainly it for the high overview of the Ceph dashboard and Ceph ADM integration.
Can you edit the placement of an existing service?
I don't think so. It's only create and delete for this placement.
Okay, I think we need that.
Yeah.
Yep. So Ernesto, you are taking notes of this, right?
Yeah. I'm using
cool.
I will paste the link in the main thread.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank
I
you.
was just thinking out loud here that when you do the create service, there's a section of it that's related to the placement. I wonder if it makes sense to have like a widget or a pattern that's always used for defining the placement that we use both for this create flow and also for the edit flow. Because just the way that you describe the placement is a somewhat complicated thing, the placement spec. Like either you specify explicit hosts, or you can do labels, or you can do, I mean, there are a bunch of different ways. So maybe it'd be nice to have a nice little GUI that wraps up that piece so that people can understand it.
So you mean having a way to generically define the placement strategy for all the different services rather than per service?
Yeah, because it's a separate structure, the placement spec, and it has its own set of constraints. Certain fields are mutually exclusive and don't make sense when mixed, and so on. So yeah.
And one question about to edit not only the placement. I think that probably we should provide the possibility to edit the spec file, the complete spec file used for each of the services.
Yeah. Yeah, just a little, yeah, that'd be nice. Just pop up a little text box. When you expand one of these services and see the daemons, can you do that for a sec? I wonder if it makes sense to have action buttons also for things like delete, restart, redeploy. There are a bunch of like per daemon actions that you can do. Might make sense.
Also, services, you can restart the bool servers. You can stop bool servers. So it works for services and for daemons.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a lot of suggestions over there. Nice. So I think that's all from me. Is there anything, Ernesto, you want to?
No, well, there were some open discussions regarding, for example, with Ceph Ansible, for example, we got the configuration for the RGW stuff, the API keys and secret. So that's something that is currently not in cephadm. So a user, after bootstrapping the cluster, they have to manually do these actions, probably from the CLI, because right now there is no way for doing that from the GUI. So yeah. I was wondering if we have the possibility to include that in cephadm or in the orchestrator.
Again, what do you want to have in the orchestrator?
Basically, it would be the configuration of some dashboard options, basically the API keys for RGW. So from the dashboard, we can access the demos.
Yeah, we have to reiterate on the RGW integration into cephadm. That's still a missing piece that we have to tackle.
Is there placeholder for that today, or that a later discussion?
If we have the time, we can discuss it today. Otherwise, we can just move it onto an orchestrator weekly or a dashboard bi-weekly.
Perfect. Thanks. So I think that's all, right? Nizam, Alfonso?
Yeah, no, my only small topic was we had a previous discussion, Sebastian and me, about a development environment. For example, this one that is using Nizam in order to have several hosts is based on a virtualization project. An upstream project that is running on top of libvirt, which is the KCLI. This is the upstream project. The fact is, this a little bit heavyweight to have these virtual machines, and it's not trivial to set up, and unless you can make it work. And we thank Juanmi for providing appropriate documentation in order to make it work. But I was wondering if it was a way for having a kind of isolated environment to test better cephadm not relying on only Vstart. Is there a way to do a bootstrap but not messing up with the laptop? I mean, I've been trying to do like containerization of the manager of the bootstrap. Of the cephadm. So this would need like a Docker in Docker or Docker in Podman or Podman in Docker, and it's not quite easy to make it work. So I was wondering an alternative, or how can we make it easy to provide an environment that we have the possibility to add some hosts or a more lightweight virtual machines, or I don't know.
Is this for dashboard development purposes?
Yeah, but it can work for any manager module,
Yeah.
in fact, or even the orchestrator module, even because what we are doing is with this KCLI, we are sharing the repo folder, so we are able to edit the Python code for the whole manager or the TypeScript for the single page app. But the fact is, Vstart requires the build, but we don't need it, in fact, for ourselves. And apart from this, if you run the Bootstrap in your machine, you have to put the dependencies in your Fedora or in your Ubuntu, in your laptop. How we can provide an isolated developer environment that can work? Or at least provide a supported lightweight virtual machine that do the Bootstrap, and then with Podman or Docker, you put all the services in containers, but at least that is supported by the community, by the project in the documentation.
I think currently it's not the best solution, but currently the best way to do this is using Vstart. So that means on your machine, you have to have all the dependencies installed and compile and build Ceph. But if you run Vstart with --cephadm, it will start up cephadm.
Yeah.
Using your existing modern manager. Yeah. And then you can add another host, whether it's a VM or whatever else, so you can get multi-host testing. It's not ideal, but I think it's
Juan Miguel, you added a flag to mount the Python module to cephadm bootstrap, right?
Yeah. We have a parameter in the Ceph in the bootstrap command in order to define what is the Ceph folder with the source. Okay. And using sorry. Sebastian?
Yeah, I mean that's a super lightweight way of setting up a developing environment. If you just call cephadm bootstrap with that flag.
Yeah.
Alfonso.
It's what we're using in KCLI. Yeah, Juanmi made some steps, so we're following this. But the fact is, we are using virtual machines. I think it's more like way to just in your physical laptop to run the cephadm bootstrap, right? Yeah, that is what you're pointing at. With the minimal dependencies installed in your system.
The thing about cephadm is that if you're removing the cluster, everything should be gone more or less, and you should not need to have your development environment in a virtual VM, at least from my point of view. There should not be. It should not be required, or it should not be advised to run your development environment in a VM.
Yeah. When I mean isolation is in order, for example, because if we do cephadm bootstrap in my physical machine, will it be using my SSH folder? Yeah, that's the thing. For some reason, it messes up with my private keys, and I lost connection with GitHub and that kind of things. Wouldn't it be better to have this isolated from your personal laptop in some way? I don't have the solution. I'm just wondering if there is some idea.
I think
or maybe it's for another discussion out of this meeting.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that Bootstrap should be doing is adding the SSH key that it generates to the root.ssh authorized keys too. It shouldn't be touching the rest of your SSH configuration.
Yeah.
It really shouldn't. Yeah.
I mean that's the I mean 99% of time, but who knows? Maybe sometime, someday, something goes wrong, and you can be the folder deleted or whatever. I don't know. The thing is to preserve our.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
well, anyway, we can set up another meeting to discuss this, and we can show some ideas.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll stop sharing and thank you all for the
Yeah.
suggestions.
Okay, thank you, Nisam.
Thank you, Sam.
Just one question, please. Can we do a quick poll about what is the environment that is using each one in order to develop with cephadm? Here in the in the Ceph part, we can put just to know what are the possibilities, okay, and what is the people using.
And besides that, we need to document all the different options and very clear, steps to get to that development cycle in each of the options if there's more than one, because it's gonna improve.
Yes, I think
really for
that
dummies.
it's important to know what are the options, okay? Because probably there is a option that is very good, okay? And we are most of us we are working with our environments and probably spending some time in order to have the environment needed to develop. So maybe we can create or schedule a new meeting in order just to discuss this part, okay? And in order to decide to use the same environment, everybody, because this is going to be a good thing for everybody, okay? Because we are going to save time.
Yeah, feel free to add your +1 to the Orchestrator Quincy Etherpad section.
Yep.
Okay. So
We have a half hour left.
we have a half hour left. Yeah, then I would say let's continue, right? Let's continue with the CDFs. So, I mean, we have a Rook session right after this one, yeah. So I wonder if we should move all the manager Rook specific ideas thought into the next session, because that's more Rook related than cephadm orchestrator related. I mean, the orchestrator is more or less settled. The orchestrator interface is more or less settled, and mostly driven by cephadm at this point.
Yeah.
And the dashboard. So what up for cephadm then? So my thought was that we should think about different themes that we should think of, like for example, looking at reducing the bug count, then making the developer experience better by looking into a better development environment or refactoring the cephadm binary, which is really necessary at that point. Scalability is a thing we need to think about. User experience, like making more use of progress items, QA totality, schedule enhancements like automatically moving daemons to a different host, and be a bit careful in adding features, because cephadm is supposed to be boring, right? So adding more features will might make things more complicated for new users. We have to be careful. On the other hand, we have to support all the different use cases, so we have to find a balance.
Yeah. I think these things all sound good to me. There are a couple, I think, items on the agenda that I think we should touch on. There's the resource scheduling piece, or auto-tuning OSD, mon MDS memory.
Yeah.
I think there are still a few decisions to make there as far as to exactly how to how to structure that and how it should work. Whether the product of the cephadm scheduling would be config options and the resource daemons, or whatever, exactly how. I don't know. I didn't prepare anything beyond what we were talking about several weeks ago. So maybe there's not a lot to say there, but except that should be one of our sort of deliverables or whatever. We could talk about host training though. That one I think is kind of probably pretty easy to address and something that we need to get in pretty quickly, because right now you can't effectively remove hosts from the cluster right now.
Yeah, the current way to remove hosts is to remove all daemons that you can remove easily, except for maybe the node exporter and the crash daemon, right? Because it's super awkward to remove it.
Mm-hmm.
And then remove that host, and then cleaning up the different things later on, like manually removing the node exporter and then manually remove it. That's a bad workaround, right? That's we have to provide an easy way to remove a host.
It seems like we really want like porch host drain, something like that. That just triggers a process. That sets it should just presumably it should set a flag on the host that tells the scheduler to like remove everything. And then once everything is removed, then it deletes it.
I have played a little bit with that, okay, and we have the host maintenance mode that I think that we can use the flag of hosting maintenance in order to avoid this problem, okay. Even in this moment, if you try to do the removal of the host using the host maintenance mode, is more easy, okay, because for example, for the cephadm-exporter or the diamonds that are problematic, you can forget about that, okay, because the service is stopped. You only need to change the spec file, the placement in the spec file of the services that are deployed in the host. And after that, remove the host, okay? And it seems that works. I think that reasonable. I think that is not perfect, okay, but is the way, okay? So maybe we can follow this path. Okay, I think that the only thing that we need to do is to if we select to drain the host, is to enter in maintenance mode, verify the services in order to change the placement of all the services, and just remove the host. Okay, when we in the Ceph loop, if the host is not existing, things are not going to be deployed there. Okay, so I think that
it's not quite the same. I mean, if we're setting a host into maintenance mode, then we are expecting it to be restarted at a later point, which means that we do not want to deploy the daemons on a different host. that are living on that daemon. But if you're removing a host and you say, I want to have 3 NDSs, and by chance one of these NDSs is on that host, then you want to make sure that you have at all points 3 MDS daemons then on a different host before removing it. So I think host draining is something slightly different.
And if you think about OSDs too, like it should trigger the OSD removal sequence also for those, where the OSDs are drained and then removed, and then all the daemons are removed one by one. Like
exactly.
It shouldn't have to do any of that manually. It should be basically a single command, and then like an hour later, it's like it's ready. And maybe the host is even immediately removed, or maybe it's just like marked as it's removable. Probably it should just actually remove it, I would think. But yeah, we can even clean up the varlib Ceph directory and stuff at the very end if we wanted to go that far.
This opened the door to another thing, okay? Because in this moment we cannot remove OSDs automatically. So if we are going to allow to remove OSDs automatically if you are removing a host?
I think we should. We have a drain function, right?
Yeah.
The OSD drain stuff thing.
I think if you call cephadm OSD remove,
yep,
then
and it removes. Yeah,
properly removing that host from the cluster.
Yep. It doesn't zap the drive, I don't think, at the very end, although it certainly could.
Yeah. Not zapping, okay? But in this moment, if you try to remove an OSD service, you need to remove manually each OSD daemon.
No, the drain does it. It evacuates all the data, and then at the very end, it deletes the OSD.
With the command cephadm drain?
I can't remember what it's called. It's ceph OSD RM.
Okay.
OSD RM.
OSD RM.
Yeah, something like that.
But this is removing a specific daemon, not a service of daemon.
Yeah. Here's the documentation for that.
Yeah.
But we would want the host drain to trigger that, among other things. Also evacuate all the other daemons.
Okay.
So anyway. I think by now we can actually start to tackle that problem, right? A year ago that was even more problematic because we missed some foundation in order to implement that. But I think by now we are more or less ready to start looking into that problem.
Yeah.
That's very similar to automatically remove daemons from a failed host. I mean, we could start automatically moving daemons to a different host if the host is offline for, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
If it's not marked as in maintenance mode.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we also have to discuss features, right? What features do we want to implement? Or what do we want to focus on?
I think this first one, making cephadm a replacement for Ceph Nano, is a low-hanging fruit because it's really just the upgrade manager, single manager thing that we need to fix, right?
By now, yes.
Yeah. And it might even be that that's as simple as making it so the standby manager doesn't open up any ports. It doesn't go into standby mode. It just keeps the modules shut down. So you actually can have 2 managers in the same host.
Yep. As soon as we have 2 managers on the same host, I think we are done with replacing Ceph Nano.
Yeah.
Yep. That would be awesome, I think. Having cephadm be properly. Is it properly possible to upgrade the Ceph Nano cluster? I think
I have no idea.
Possible to do manually, right?
Probably. Yeah.
So we could actually start to replace Ceph Nano even now because we wouldn't lose any functionality.
Yeah.
One thought about features, okay? It's about prioritization. Now, I don't know, but I don't know if Ceph Nano is very famous and very used in the world, okay? But I think that probably, well, my view is that probably the list of features that we need to implement at this moment is all the features that we need in the dashboard in order to make things more easy for the final user. I think that probably for me is the most important. So, for example, to have a wizard in order to start the cluster, okay, in the dashboard, and the support in the orchestrator that we are almost there, okay, in order to make easy to install the cluster, I think that is a good idea. To improve, for example, the OSD management in the dashboard and to provide the tools in order to do this very easy, I think that is another point that is important, okay? To improve the creation and the edit, the maintenance of the services in the dashboard. So I think that probably what my view is that probably we must be focused in the high layer, the dashboard,
Yeah.
okay, and start to work towards down in order to provide all the functionality that we need to make very easy to install and to work with a Ceph cluster using the Ceph dashboard.
Yeah, that's more of a theme of the user experience, right? That's also really important.
Yep.
That's one reason I'm a bit reluctant to try to add as many features as possible to cephadm because it makes the user experience harder. It's going to make it harder to achieve a good user experience if we add tons of features to cephadm.
Yeah, I think focusing on a top-down view makes a lot of sense too. To make sure that the feature we add actually will be visible to using dashboard.
Yeah. Okay, we have 15 minutes left. Do we want to talk about Crimson? Or no?
I'm not sure. I think we can probably defer that.
Okay.
I don't know that it's a...
Yeah, there's a whole lot to discuss there. I think it mostly ties in with the resource management discussion. Just adding the CPU resources.
Yeah. I guess on my list, there's sort of two things I want to cover. One of them is just really quick. I think this cephadm-exporter is going to be like a one of the themes, whatever, over this next cycle, making it work reliably, and probably the default model for how cephadm is scraping information. I just had a nit though. Can we rename it to something else? Because every time I see cephadm-exporter, I think it has something to do with exporting information from the cluster or something, and it has.
Yeah, that's what it does right now.
Can we call it an agent? Isn't it just it's just a per node agent, right?
Yeah.
Or we can call it cephadm-lit or something, or I don't know.
Paul was very demanding on calling it exporter. But yes, as we now have that daemon running on each host, we can use it for more things than just exporting some information.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, why not, right? Why not use a cephadm daemon to listen to the Mon database and let the cephadm-exporter detect that, yeah, I need to deploy a daemon on my host. That would remove the SSH, completely remove the need to run SSH connections to the remote hosts. And let the cephadm-exporter do it by itself.
Interesting.
I'll be honest. I haven't looked at it yet. I'm not even sure if it runs in a container or not. So
No,
I can't.
it runs natively.
It runs on the host. Okay.
Yeah. Which makes that architecture possible.
Yeah.
I don't know how important that is, but it would certainly make it possible to deploy a daemon on all hosts simultaneously.
Right. Yeah, I think it would make things much more scalable.
Yeah.
But we'd have to make
Imagine
sure
if you have 1,000 hosts, and deploy the crash daemon, for example, on all hosts at the same time.
Yep.
That would change the architecture of cephadm from a kind of a push
Ripple.
or from a the other way around, the other way around.
Yep. Yep. I think it sounds good, but I think for me it seems like that's going to be a key item for Quincy, but there are a few gaps that we need to fill first, particularly around the HA, just to get sort of. I hesitate to say feature complete, but at some level it's sort of feature completeness before we tackle that big scalability jump.
Yep.
Okay, well, the other big item I wanted to talk about, and this might bleed into the Rook discussion, is how we should be, what the orchestrator interface for HA should look like. So this started when I looked at the HA-RGW task service a couple weeks ago, and I didn't like the way that it was coupling HA proxy and the keep-alive-D into one blob, and you always had to deploy them together as a pair, and it only worked for RGW and a bunch of other issues. Because in my case, I wanted to deploy only HA proxy for some reason, and I could imagine situations where you only wanted a virtual IP. So I separated those out into two separate services. But then once I basically finished that, I have doubts about whether that's actually the right abstraction, because it doesn't really map onto what Rook does. Because in the Rook case, in the Kubernetes case, the sort of the quote unquote service in Kubernetes is all the virtual networking and the load balancing and the external IP is it's always there, first of all, and it's sort of combined with this. It's a property of the RGW service, DRD, whatever it is. And so I wonder if the orchestrator interface should do something similar, where for any service, at least any service where it makes sense, there's an optional property that's like external IP, and whether or not, I guess, is it really just the external IP? And then if that's set, then cephadm will deploy HA proxy and or keep alive D as needed in order to expose that service. And so I'm trying to think through what the scenarios are, where that makes sense.
I like the idea of having the different HA daemons and the different systemd service units.
For the daemons. Yes.
Yeah, different service systemd service units. So we need, and I also like the idea of having services being able to control more than one daemon per host. I mean, we already have that with co-located daemons, right? And what do you think of indeed using this kind of public IP thing property on the service, on the RGW service, and then letting the service create some kind of a deployment similar to a Kubernetes deployment, and then using that extra layer of the data structure to separate out the implementation of the HA proxy and keep alive D and the user interface.
Yeah, that kind of cleans it up a little bit, but it also like adds a whole nother layer. So it makes me a little nervous.
We already have that layer.
The deployment layer.
Yeah, the deployment layer. Volker Theile implemented a way to deploy any kind of daemons, any kind of container, basically. Some kind of, I want to run this container with those parameters on those hosts, and that's exactly what a Kubernetes deployment does. So we already have that implemented. We just need to make use of it.
That is an RGW service like a single instance of Redis Gateway daemon, or is it like multiple?
The zone.
It's a whole zone. Okay.
So one of the main properties of the service is the like the placement, which is how many daemons you have and whether it's on certain nodes and so on. So we would add
it's already a container for multiple daemons.
Yeah. So I guess in the RGW case, I mean, I wonder if whether we have this intermediate deployment layer is sort of an implementation detail. Wonder if it makes sense first to just settle on what the Orchestrator API should look like for this. And then we can figure out what the most elegant or expedient way to implement that is. In the RGW case, it seems like the first thing that we would want is in the for Kubernetes and Rook, when you deploy an RGW, you don't get to pick the IP. It just deploys the service and it allocates one dynamically. But that's something that we need to surface that we don't right now. So maybe the first thing is that in like Ceph Orch LS, we would show the IP port endpoint. So we would have like a column for the ports. So at least that gets reported back up, and you have some visibility into how that service is exposed. And then, even though in the work case you can't set it, in the cephadm case though, you have to provide that argument in order to actually get the endpoint IP. I guess it's complicated because do we want to make it so that this is like an optional thing, or should like cephadm unconditionally also deploy HA proxy and virtual IPs in order to for every security service, right?
I don't think we are there yet to make it mandatory.
Right. Yeah.
I think we have existing use cases that deploy their own HA deck because all previous Ceph deployment tools did not, or not all previous deployment tools provided that. So there are existing solutions, and I think users need some cycles to adapt.
So that means that at the orchestrator layer, you have a couple different modes, right? You have like deploy the RGW cluster, and in the Rook case, it'll unconditionally include all the HA, but in cephadm, you might have no HA. You might have, or you do on HA, but in the cephadm case, you have to provide the IP, whereas in Kubernetes Rook case, you don't provide and you can't provide the IP. And it might be that in the RGW case, you might want to deploy with or without HA proxy, like you might want active passive, or it's just a virtual IP, or you might want active active, in which case it's a virtual IP plus HA proxy, or you might have active active, but like without the virtual IP, where you just have multiple HA proxies and maybe use round robin DNS or something like that. Like there are a couple different ways that you could do it. And it's unclear to me like how you how you would construct the service spec in that case to sort of describe those cases in a way that like is as similar as possible between what you get with Rook and what you get with what you provide with cephadm. Right?
I am with the option to start with something simple, no? Like adding the virtual IP to the specification of the service and try to use that to install HA proxy plus keep alive, okay, and provide only one kind of configuration, okay? Because, for example, in the case of RGW, what we have done is just try to mimic what we have in this moment in Ceph Ansible, okay? And the same parameters that we have in the Ceph Ansible playbook is the parameters that we have in the specification for, let's say, for RGW, okay? And well, it seems that it was the thing that was needed, okay? So what I think is that probably, well, we can improve that. We can separate and use Keep Alive and HA proxy in other services, but maybe the first step is to, well, this thing, to make easy to use this to the final user. So using a virtual IP is, I think, that the only thing that we need, and user is going to be very happy with that. Okay, and after that, in the background, we just to deploy HA proxy and keep alive. It is going to be more complicated, and it is going to be the layer that you do not want, Sage. But I think that there is no other possibility.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's probably fine. And if there's actually a need for somebody to not have HA proxy for some reason, just a quick question: HA proxy can do the SSL termination, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's actually good anyway because it combines all that logic. So then we know not to configure RGW with SSL, whatever. It like ignores all of those, papers over all of those details. I think the other key use case though is for NFS, and that's the other like key deliverable I think that we need to get into cephadm supported as soon as possible and backported specific. And in that case, I think at the very minimum we need a virtual IP. At the minimum we need the virtual IP, but my understanding is that Ceph Ansible is also deploying HA proxy in order to balance NFS.
Ceph Ansible supporting HA for NFS?
Yes. Let me see if I can find the link. I was asking Guillaume about this the other day. There is the link he provided. I haven't looked at yet. Yeah, it's using keep alive and that's RGW. Never mind, that's the wrong thing. Maybe he was confused. Actually, maybe he was thinking of RGW.
But this page is for RGW.
Yeah, you're right. You might have misunderstood my question. Well, in any case, I think regardless of what Ceph Ansible does, at a minimum, we need people ID and a virtual IP for NFS. I know you can use HA proxy to load balance NFS v4, although I'm not sure if there are pros and cons or disadvantages to doing that. I guess that's something we can look into, but we could probably start with just the virtual IP. That's probably the minimum that we would need.
Yeah.
We are out of time.
Yeah. Okay.